I was with a business lady today and she was asking me about the economy. She's selling a restaurant and she's sort of wondering what to do with that and how I thought about the economy here in Australia. And it's pretty blunt. I said, look, I really do think that our economy's pretty much collapsed already. It's just playing out. And it's very easy to not want to listen to that because it's very confrontive. There's so much going on in the world right now. Who wants to think about, a change in the way we live? But I wanted to start to give some more practical type little chats on this. And one of them is start to prepare. Get past the fear that wants to incapacitate you. Fear as a way of making you sleepy, or you want to just get involved in life and things to try to not have to face those things. But it's really not where you want to be. Just take small steps in the direction of addressing the way of life. There will be a change in the way we live. There will be a change in our standard of living and our way of living. Start to make adaptations and changes now, so that it's not such a rude shock. If you wake up one morning and our economy's collapsed wherever you are in the world, it's, don't be that one that goes, wow, how did that happen? I can tell you now, it is planned to happen, it will happen, and it is going to happen. Whether or not you believe in visions and things like that, I definitely adhere to the God, Holy Spirit speaking and preparing us. And 20-something years ago, I had vision of the US with money that deep on the ground in Boston, and nobody was picking the money up. And I guess it was worthless. It's coming, and not to bring fear, but it's coming. Prepare. And some of the simple little things you can do is start to change the way you do things. Start to become, I know people that will only eat one brand of food. They won't, try. I knew a family that they ate vanilla yogurt and that's all they ate. They wouldn't try strawberry yogurt. And that's all well and good when you're able to do that. But if there's things you like, I suggest start to open your life up to a little bit more change, a little bit more creativity of things. That can be intimidating, but try a different brand at the supermarket. Now, to some of us, that'll be like, what? That's ridiculous. To others, no. In this family, it was the end of the world to try a different brand. Open up to trying different brands, because as things change, it's pride. There's no place for pride. The people with pride are the ones that are going to be having a heck of a journey. Pride comes before a fall. In any society, there's throwaway, and I'm not saying to eat out of dumpsters, but in any society there's a pecking order. And these supermarkets, I'm sitting outside a supermarket now, some people would never consider buying yogurts, dairies, meats that are close to date, because or on date. Oh, it's close to date. No, you get a little bit more flexible. Dairy, as most people could know, when dairy's off, you know it. You taste it, you smell it. They're not going to sell off food. When meat is close to date, you freeze it, or you cook it and freeze it. Put it in a dish and freeze it. Those sort of things. Bread. I know when we were in Portugal, bread was still baked daily and fresh, and you would buy it in the morning and it'd be stale by the afternoon. But the bread's here. Start to look at how to cook bread. It's not hard to do. It's, in fact, homemade bread is beautiful. Get yourself a bread maker. Just simple little things. One thing we did at one stage is we made soap, and soap is not hard to make. Look on the internet now and start to download and build a folder with resources of things that you can do. Think of your needs, make a list of the needs that you have to live, and then start to look at each one itemize each one and then say, okay, what can I do that's creative on there? Soap was very easy. I remember we used ash from a fire. You would have a fire, have the ash, and I forget what we put with it now, but it's on the internet. And lye would be made, and from that we would make soap, and it was good soap. Bartering. I'm going to put more resources up for bartering. We've started the bartering, the global bartering network, and I'm going to do how-tos on bartering. It's really not hard, but to start to be a little bit more creative on income streams and provision streams. I think you look at things in your home now that you can make adjustments to. I mean, I remember staying in a house in Washington, D.C., and they had us stay there for quite a while, actually many months, and their electricity bill went down while we were there. They were expecting it to go up, and they were so surprised that the electricity had gone down. And all that happened was every day they went to work, I would go and turn all the lights off, because they would leave the lights on all day in the house, and it just put the electricity way up. So when I put it down, we lived with them and their electricity went down. Start to become a little more conscious of things like that. You know, some of these things sound very simple and practical, but when you've never lived it. I remember we were feeding people in Boston. I collected a lot of food, trailer loads of food, and we would give it out. I found a lot of the food pantries were attached to organisations that kind of put a bit of an expectation on getting food from them. And I organised to pick up food, and we didn't even want to know who the people were. We would just give food out. We started to say, just come, get the food. I don't want to know who you are. The only condition is whatever you take, you've got to give some to your neighbours and your friends. And people would come, and we would have 50-pound sacks of rice. They would come and take these sacks of rice and be like a frenzy at first, but then the next week they'd be back and very polite, because you can't eat that much food. But start to have provision and creative ways with your neighbours, with your families, with your friends. Like I've said, build the right people around your life that are not parasitic. They're not parasites that want to just suck off you and use you emotionally, mentally, naturally, physically, whatever. Start to get the right people around your life. We gave food to a lady in Boston, I remember, that was living in a middle upper class neighbourhood, an upper class neighbourhood. Her husband was a Wall Street trader and had a very unique area of work and lost his job. He was sitting in his office depressed. She'd never cooked a piece of meat. She'd never cooked steak. We didn't meet her for 6 months. The lady would come and pick up the food, and we would give it to a friend of a friend sort of thing, and she would drop it off. We didn't know her name. We didn't want to know her name. When we didn't see people, it was great, because it meant they were getting on their feet, and we were just there to be helping people over a bump in the road. And after about 6 months, they turned up. But I remember the first time we sent her meat, she didn't know how to cook it. Start to learn how to cook things a little different. Start to learn that you know, carbs are not real good, but start looking at diets of carbs. I mean, a lot of the poorer cultures, rice is a staple, pasta is a staple. Those sort of things are good for filling up kids. Cereal in the morning for breakfast is not. I mean, with 8 children when we were living this, they'd eat a box of cereal in the morning and be hungry an hour later. We made a porridge cake, or oatmeal cake for the Americans, and they loved it. So to start to think of just things like that, you know, maybe you've never had vegetable gardens. Well, just think of maybe some little things you can do in those areas, and even just down to growing some herbs in your garden. Practical, simple things that are going to get you through and just help ease a little bit of pressure. But with everything you do that eases a little bit of pressure, you know, a little bit and a little bit and a little bit can end up easing a lot of pressure. And when this thing goes, we're all going to be under pressure, but you won't have as bad because of how you are. It's not the mentality to become a survivalist and to try to live at other people's expense, but just prepare. I think to understand that you will not store enough food for the length of time that's needed. Inflation cycles don't go away in a few months, it's years. You can't store a year's worth of food in your basement. And if you do, what happens if something happens to it? You know, mold or whatever. So just start to think about some of those things. Think about the fact that, and you can see this on some of the videos we have on the Inflation Global Freedom site. Inflation Freedom Global, whichever way around it is. They, Venezuela and Brazil, where they talk about buying and selling fast, working in areas of things that are essentials, not things that people are optional. Because if you're in something that's optional, you're going to be optioned out, because people won't have the money. Just get into something that's essential. Start now to learn how to repair appliances. One of the things they said is people don't have the money to buy new, so instead of just buying a new washing machine, they'll fix the old, but they have to have somebody fix that. It's to be able to train people to fix that. One of the fallacies that people have is they think government is a secure place to work. Where I am here is in Canberra, is the capital city of Australia, the government centre, the Washington DC of Australia. And it's an illusion to think that government is a safe place to be during inflation, because when we talk to Venezuela, now bear in mind, now we think of Venezuela as a poor nation, but Venezuela was the richest nation in South America. Venezuela has oil, it has diamonds, it has gold deposits, and it was a wealthy country that's gone to the bottom. Massive resources like Australia. You can't say Australia has natural resources and we'll be fine. We will not be, because like Venezuela, it's the same here. The elites will take care of themselves and their families, and everybody else is there to just be expendable. So working for government, it's not the place to be. In Venezuela, they told us, and the figures may not be exact, but you'll get the idea that there was about 1 million government workers. As inflation came in, the government turns to socialism. And so socialistic programs they put on, they now had, he said, about 6 million workers. Those workers were on $6,000 a month. They're now on the equivalent of $6 a month. And the government gives them a gift bag once a month. Not every month, but some months they get a gift bag, which might have toilet paper, toothpaste, soap, things like that in it. So the government workers are completely dependent on government. They don't earn enough in a month to eat for a day. And bear in mind, that's happened because the value of their dollar has dropped. So they may still be earning $6,000, but those $6,000 or whatever they are now worth $6. The buying power of those is equivalent to $6. So being in government doesn't give you increases. They take a lot. They take a little and they give it to a lot. They're trying to be social. They give it out to everybody. So a job that used to be for one person, now 10 people will be doing that job. But the money won't be there. The houses, like here in Canberra, people own 2 or 3 houses. The housing market, where already there's a video we just put up on the Inflation Freedom Global site about house prices in Australia, how inflation will go through the roof on houses, hyperinflation. Now people, get in your mind, people think, oh, house prices are going up, I'm rich, I'm a millionaire, everyone's house is worth $1 million. Listen, if everyone's house is worth $1 million, nobody's house is worth $1 million. Nobody's a millionaire. If everybody's a millionaire, nobody's a millionaire. So we're looking at inflation in houses, which was where it hits first. And in Venezuela, he was telling me the prices of homes were so expensive, people couldn't afford it. Because you think about it, if you have a 30% increase in inflation, if your wages have not gone up more than 30%, you're behind. Your buying power is way behind. And let me say, your wages will not go up more than inflation goes up. So if house prices are going up 30%, which is the prediction here again shortly in Australia, unless you're at 35, 40% increase in your wages, you won't be able to buy it. You say, well, my house is worth more. No, it's not, because your buying power has been lessened. as inflation is, you have noticed, right? And groceries are going up. You have noticed that your bills are going up. You have noticed that your gasoline is going up. So there's things that you won't be able to afford because the buying power of your money has decreased. Our money has decreased. So don't, in your mind, don't look at numbers and think, oh gee, I've got wealth. Numbers in an inflation cycle, numbers are meaningless. In where was it now? Venezuela, I think he was telling us that the dollar, which was a good dollar, comparable to the US dollar at the time, now it went up to a trillion of their dollars, worth one of the US, say. It was some crazy number like that. I don't know the exact number, but it was something like in the trillions. I know Zimbabwe, a loaf of bread in the millions, probably more now. I mean, but they don't get an increase in their wages. And if you're working for the government does not give you increases in wages. So in Venezuela, he tells us that the government workers are all trying to get out of government and get into private industry because you're able to survive more there. But because the government has nationalized everything, if a business is doing well, they come in and they nationalize it and take it over. It becomes a government income stream. So it's being creative and staying under the radar of some of that stuff where you're able to bring security, safety and stability to your economic situation for your family. And that may be trading with your neighbours and things. I think a good thing to do in business now, if you're in a tradesman or whatever business you're in, is to start to look at a model of already bartering, starting to allow people to swap you their goods and services for your goods and services. Start to change your way of thinking a little to adapt to that. And if you get good at that, you'll be doing really well out of that, because people that can't do anything might swap you a car to fix their toilet, because you have to have a toilet, but they can live without a car. A Mercedes-Benz, they're going to be parked on the side of the road, stripped, because people won't be able to afford to fix those high-end cars. So this lady I started talking about that was wanting to sell her business, I said, when you sell your business, put the money offshore. Do not leave it in Australia. And that's another thing Venezuela says. So when the house prices are going massively up, and we're looking and going, well, we can't afford a house, if your currency is stored offshore somewhere, because I believe the world will go regionally, and I actually think Australia and New Zealand will probably be some of the first nations to collapse economically, because we just don't have the population that they have in other parts of the world. And as you'll see from some of the videos we've just put up, Australia has a unique situation where their banks are very, very tied into the mortgages of their exposure to the mortgages, home mortgages. And as prices of houses go up, people can't afford them, they default on their mortgages, they can't buy a new house, banks default. I think they were saying on that video that it's something like most banks around the world have about a 28% exposure to home mortgages. In Australia, it's something like 68% in the banks, something like that. It was pretty staggering numbers. So when our housing market tanks here, the banks go under. And if your money's tied up here, inflation is going to go hyper as it kicks in. You're stuck. So we have that global bartering network where maybe you've got family overseas that need things. So you could say you have an asset in America, you could start to barter with that if you're in Australia and get Americans to use that. So you're getting an income stream in another country that's maybe helping your family, your friends, you. Get creative. I told this lady, I think the British pound probably won't go quite as fast as the Australian dollar. I mean, ultimately it'll all suffer. People are like, well, what about Bitcoin? We'll go to Bitcoin. Personally, I don't see it. I don't think there is a final answer, a final solution to any of this. Bitcoin, my problem I see there is after the Second World War, the US outlawed gold because they needed it to jumpstart the economy, so everybody had to turn their gold in. You say, well, that's outrageous. I'll keep my gold. Well, it's illegal to keep your gold. You can keep your gold, but you'll never use it. You can never trade it because the government outlawed it. You turn up and try to trade something in gold, you're in trouble. So it's already happened, and there's nothing new under the sun, as the Bible says. So I think Bitcoin will be the same. If everybody, the economy, our Australian dollar collapses, or your dollar, wherever you are in the world, collapses, they're not going to allow you to trade in Bitcoin while everybody else is struggling. They're going to outlaw Bitcoin, or they're going to find a way to make it illegal for you to use it. You say, oh, they could never do that. And I say, yeah, you watch them. With enough motivation, the government will do anything. They will outlaw things and say that you have to hand it in. And they did it in Brazil when they closed the Cruzeiro was the currency. And you'll see that on our Brazilian video. They crashed the Cruzeiro and bought out the Real. And people complained, the millionaires overnight gone. And everybody gets these Reals, and they complained, well, what about all their money? It's gone. And the government basically said to them, well, tough. You want a country? You want an economy? Thank you very much. You helped your country. Thank you for your service. Don't think it won't come here. You look and say, oh, this would never happen in Australia, never happen in America, New Zealand. We're a civilized country, just like Venezuela was. Just like, just don't bet on it. Come on now, let's be reasonable. You all know government. You know government. You've seen the wicked laws they're passing to protect themselves. And I don't believe in this freedom movement. We have seen a slew of laws passed by our governments to protect themselves. And I don't believe it's to combat the freedom movement. I believe they are learning from the freedom movement, because they know full well we are going to see food riots. We're going to see rioting, smashing in the streets, because when people have nothing to lose, they have nothing to lose. Look at the videos on the inflation site from Sri Lanka. The police running from the people because they cannot stop what's happening. So I believe here in Australia, a lot of the laws that they've passed, and they've fenced off Parliament House and made it illegal to be there, and given people move on orders for life and things like that. They're trying to find ways to control the population when it starts to get angry at government. So don't put your energy into anger. Put your energy into life. Put your energy into building freedom, joy. Yes, there's going to be massive pressure. Yes, there's going to be massive depression and oppression. If you struggle with depression, which everybody does in some way, but if you're struggling with oppression and depression, start to address that in your life now. Don't go on medication for it. Find a way to do it. Get out and walk. I've been through some roads of hell over the last couple of years. I didn't have to take any medication to deal with that. My medication was to get outdoors and walk. I would walk around the lake. I would talk to my God. I would empty of the pain. Whether you believe in God or not, let me tell you, when you're hungry, you will. I've sat next to hospital beds of some of the meanest men you've ever met. I remember sitting beside a man in Massachusetts. It was a state trooper for over 30 years. He was a hard old man. Didn't believe in God, he was as tough as nails. But he got cancer, and he was dying. And that man wept as he opened his life up to be touched by the living God, the love of Jesus that came and just washed through his life. Now, whether you believe in that or not, put your religion aside and start to allow the Spirit of God to touch your life and bring peace to you. Don't turn to vices. If you're going to turn to drink, alcohol, drugs, sex, those things, you'll never get enough to deal with what's coming. You need to start to take responsibility now for what's in our lives and start to get freedom and joy in life. And that comes by building those right people around our lives and the right God in our life. Just leave the religious structure out of it and just meet with God yourself. Talk with him and let him come and touch your life. So practical things. I'm hoping here soon I'm reaching out to the man that was in Brazil that's lived some of this way too. We're going to talk about some more practical ways to prepare, simple practical ways, so we're not going to get caught off guard. God bless you.